So my name is Peter Mintchev and I'm a senior UX designer at Magento. I work in the Austin office, and today I wanted to talk about managing the design process, but I've been responsible for kind of developer experience at Magento for about a year, and I work on the cloud project. So I've been kind of looking at just process in general, and we're going to expand the kind of notion of design process a little bit with this. So we're not going to talk about pictures and buttons really. So I really like to start with this cartoon by the great Matthew Inman. It actually summarizes like a design process going like really great in quotations, and kind of what are the players and what are the things that are going wrong. So the first one is, with every project, the start is like meeting the client or the stakeholder. And things always go great because everybody is ambitious to get this thing to be the best project they'll ever do. Of course, you're going to look at what the current solution is. That's the recommendation. And of course, it is terrible and everybody hates it. And that further kind of bonds you together and you make sure that this is really going to work. And the first prototype or the first solution is created. In this case, it's this website. You're very proud of it. You worked on it really hard. Like, this is the best thing you ever showed anybody. And of course, the client says, like, this is amazing, but let's get some feedback from, I think, his mom in this case. And here is where things kind of start to really spiral down. They keep inviting feedback, and these people keep adding recommendations, and eventually, you feel that really that you have like no voice in this, and you're just becoming a kind of a pen in this external process of disaster. And of course, the final solution that looks strangely similar to it. And the great thing about this one is it actually ships. We know that many of the times when you go through this kind of fantastic process, things just die off. So I would say this is a fairly successful way for things to go. But anyways, let's see what happens. So let's try to kind of understand design. And I think the first thing that we want to understand design is a shared experience. And really, design is not owned by one person. And design is really, the process of design is like every single element or aspect or participant that affects the final solution. So what you actually ship, like everything that went until that final process, is part of the design. Design process has multiple participants. And the interesting thing is that every participant has different role and different perspective. So at the top, you always have the client, and they just want a successful business. They actually don't care what you do. They don't care about code. They don't care about sketch or pictures or anything. They actually want to make money on their store. Then you have, of course, the designer, which wants to make beautiful designs to post on Dribbble and to get tons of likes on them. And they want everything to be pixel perfect, so they take about 4 months per screen. And then you have the developers, and I'm really sorry for speaking for you guys in this, but a lot of you just want to write code, in my opinion. And they often think that design is not their job. That's why they call us like, can you please give me a message for this error screen? Now the delivery. So traditionally, I think, and to be honest, the expectation is you have your design and it's complete, and then you kind of develop it and you ship it, right? So it's your kind of successful waterfall process. And a lot of clients expect that to this day. Then you have the reality. You have a design, and then you have this kind of big decision mess where the client gets insecure, calls their mom, there is like other stakeholders. And it's usually a gap, like nobody, like the designers don't take in this part, and then usually the developers are not called there because of course the design is not finalized. Developers do not develop unless design is ready. And then we have this best practice, right? This kind of agile slide that everybody has seen like a million times where people are saying, you should be kind of designing things and then you should start developing early and kind of have this like feedback loop. Potentially you have this kind of thing repeating over and over in small increments. Now the question is, how do we change from reality to that best practice? And my hypothesis is that there's actually two key elements here. One is you need to have open planning. So it's very important, as in that previous slide, to inform the stakeholders that everybody's going to participate in this kind of overlap process. The next one is you want to have strategic research and testing. Now the cool thing about testing is when you put like incremental testing, especially in the UX design, this allows you to kind of break up the process because the testing stages actually kind of create like these little bundles where everybody can come together and kind of discuss things. So here are how to achieve this. First of all is don't get dropped in the middle of the process. This has happened very, very often to everybody, and I think in any part of like tech industry where somebody has decided on something, they have like the Photoshop files ready, they're ready to, can you please just do that one little thing? We're really ready. And of course it never works that way, and like it's never that one little thing. So it's really important to try to participate and at least get informed of what has happened before and what the plan is for later. Like don't just kind of look at a little, like a silo or a sliver. Now here I'm gonna get a little bit in kind of explaining UX design, because you want to be that developer that can participate in the design conversation, you want to be there from the beginning and you want to give your feedback. I think it's good to understand really how at least user experience or visual design like works. So at the base, you really need to talk about business goals. I think a lot of time people kind of, even project managers, come with already kind of wireframe sketched out and they know how it's going to work out. And I think it's really important to push people to kind of step back and talk about business goals. Then you have user experience. And we think of this as the kind of user stories. So this is not how the screens are going to look. This is not how how big the logo is going to be. This is really about how do that person is going to really meet or fulfill those business goals. Like where are they going to start, what they're going to do, how often they're going to brush their teeth, etc., and where they're going to end where they're buying a product. The next one is interactions. So then you're looking at the small segments, like what are the touch points of that experience. And really this is where we kind of can start talking about screens. We can say, okay, is there going to be a checkout? Is there going to be like a product search in this area? And how is that going to work? And of course, the last piece is visuals. So really, how is this going to look and feel? Now, the next thing is this is how testing happens. So when you separate those goals, you actually can test each individual stage separately. And I'm not gonna get into the detail of how to execute each one of those, but essentially for business goals, it's really important to set KPIs. This is something that the business team should have, but it's something that even you should be aware of and demand. So are we gonna measure this based on like numbers of users, like user time per site or something like that? Or what we're trying to achieve this on the business side? The next one is user stories. So this is where a lot of UX kind of takes over. And it's a kind of a qualitative validation of the user story. So we've decided like what we want the person to do with our product. Now the next thing is to validate, are they actually gonna do it? A lot of the time, this is very hard since it's early prototyping stage, this is very hard to do with some kind of a metrics. So we do a lot of interviews, and some of you maybe have participated in UX interviews and probably will get outreach by me or one of my colleagues. We really want to interview people and you kind of understand how they're gonna go through the process. The next step, of course, is once you go through iteratively through the kind of user stories, you come with a hypothesis and then you start testing the interactions. Now the good thing about interactions, you can actually get some quantitative data. So you usually set like goals, like completion goals, and you start running people through those tests. You can recruit kind of larger groups of people for those, and you get like a bit harder kind of data on how successful your interactions are. And this is usually referred to as usability testing. And then the last one is visuals. Now visuals could be included in your interaction test, so you can work, if you're not designing entirely new look and feel for the project and you work out of some kind of platform, you can probably already have visuals. But what is important to do for visuals is that it's combined mix. So you want to get a kind of a subjective opinion always for people, like do they like it? Is blue working for them? This, as weird as it sounds, actually affects things. But also changing things visually can affect your usability results. What I mean by this is a lot of the time people do interaction and usability testing with wireframes, and it's kind of still in the best practices of UX design. Oh yeah, like do the wireframes first and like test those. But a lot of the time, just changing the color, you may affect accessibility. Just changing the position, people cannot find that call to action anymore. So tweaking things or changing the size of fonts. Actually, I've seen huge changes in the usability testing results just by affecting visual things. All right, so really kind of going back to the beginning, let's see how the same scenario could work out. I know in the previous one we were always like, oh yeah, that was just a terrible client. But the main thing is that we can actually manage that terrible client in order to kind of achieve a better result. So first, we want to deliver measurable value. This is also important that we should always strive to kind of measure also what we deliver. People like that a lot better than, it was a great project. So at the beginning, we want to set goals. Simple as that. Now, let's look at kind of analysis of what the existing project is. So very often, people were coming in with a solution or what they want to change. So in this case, they want to redesign the site, change how it looks. But maybe their solution actually does not match their business goals. When you have goals, you can actually go back and evaluate those goals against what they think actually the problem is. So maybe redesign is working great. You have issues with the order of your checkout, and it's not really the picture that you have selected to have on that page. So, it's good at first not to show one solution. It's good to discuss solutions early. And kind of discover and present them as opportunity. So this is a great thing not to invest a lot of time and effort, but kind of lay things out and really help the client evaluate them. So here's the interesting thing about user testing is you should invite people to give you feedback, and it hurts. I hate putting my work that I really liked and I thought a lot about it, putting it in front of somebody, and in 5 minutes they're just like, I really hate it, this is not working, and so on. But it's something we have to live with, and the way to kind of deal with this is do that really early. The earlier you do it, the more invested you're going to be in that design or in that decision you're making, and the easier it's going to pivot and make changes. So once you're done with testing, you kind of create a hypothesis for a solution. So you got the feedback, you got the subjective kind of out of people, you create a hypothesis, and you're moving into that kind of more higher fidelity prototyping that you're working. And now you're moving to kind of another type of testing. So this is your objective testing, where you're actually going to get quantitative information for your results. And you're not going to get in that situation where later on people will just kind of, the client is going to call you at 2 o'clock because they've been staring at the site on 2 beers and they decide that the color is really horrible. So again, in this scenario, actually everybody becomes this kind of, numb figure. But in this case, it's not going to be the client that is kind of guiding you, but actually it's the process. So later in the game, it's really important to establish a kind of a more fixed process of validating and get data. That's why it's nice that the second testing process is actually your quantitative results, because you don't get into the arguments of how things should be. And of course, you have a solution, the numbers are behind it, you decide to ship it, and this is another thing that it's very easy to miss. You always want to have a loop and a fullback loop. So you want to set up those metrics, go back to those business KPIs and actually measure and see if your solution is correct. All right. So I kind of outlined some of the key takeaways. So first, outright define goals for each design aspect. Really invite open subjective feedback early in the process. And then later on, use objective processes like testing to finalize designs and especially to resolve conflicts. So if somebody says, I really want to change this checkout process, you'll be like, can we test it with a prototype before we actually spend the time doing it? And of course, follow up and track success. So I want to thank also Danielle. She's a researcher at Magento and she couldn't be here. She helped me with this presentation. And of course, this is me. And if you want to kind of continue the discussion, we can be reached at research@magento.com. Thank you.